the Night Witches, fearless flyers of the Soviet sky. The year was 1942, and the world was engulfed in the flames of the Second World War. On the Eastern Front, the Soviets battled the relentless advance of Nazi Germany. The skies over Europe were a battleground for advanced bombers, fighter jets, and anti-aircraft fire. But amidst the roar of engines and the scream of bullets, there was something else, something quieter, something that struck terror into the hearts of German soldiers. It was the sound of the Night Witches. They weren't ghosts or mythical beings. The Night Witches were real, an all-female Soviet bombing regiment that became one of the most feared forces of the war. Officially known as the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, these women, most in their late teens and early 20s, flew flimsy, outdated planes and carried out hundreds of daring bombing missions under the cover of darkness. The regiment was formed in the depths of the Soviet Union's darkest hour. The Nazis had launched their brutal invasion, and it seemed as though nothing could stop their advance. In desperation, Soviet high command allowed women to serve in combat roles, something unheard of before. Among these recruits were young women from all walks of life, students, farmers, factory workers, all eager to do their part for the motherland. At the helm of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment was a woman named Marina Raskova, a record-breaking aviator known as the Soviet Amelia Earhart. Raskova had a vision of using women pilots to take on critical bombing missions that the male pilots were often too busy to undertake. She convinced Stalin himself to let her form a women's regiment. And soon, the Night Witches were born. But the women of the 588th were not given sleek, modern planes. They were handed Polikarpov Po-2 biplanes, relics of the 1920s. These slow, rickety aircraft were made of plywood and canvas, barely more than crop dusters. The open cockpits left the pilots exposed to freezing winds and enemy fire. The planes had no armor, no radar, and no parachutes, but the Night Witches learned to turn these shortcomings into advantages. The Po-2 was so slow and light that it could fly incredibly low and avoid detection by enemy radar. And at night, when the bombers set out, their engines barely made a sound. In fact, the planes made such a faint noise that when they cut their engines to glide silently over their targets, all the Germans heard was a soft whooshing sound, like the wind whispering through the trees. It was this eerie silence that earned them the nickname, the Night Witches. Imagine, for a moment, what it was like to be a young woman in the regiment. You're barely 20 years old, you've been through only a few months of flight training, and now you're being sent into the dead of night. You and your navigator take off in a plane that's so underpowered it can barely carry 2 bombs. The wind is biting, freezing your hands to the controls, and you're flying straight into a hail of anti-aircraft fire. You can see the German searchlights sweeping the sky, looking for you, waiting to shoot you down. But you don't give in to fear. Instead, you fly lower, barely skimming the tops of the trees. You shut off your engine, let the plane glide silently through the night, and then, just as you reach the target, you drop your bombs. The explosion lights up the sky behind you as you pull the plane into a sharp turn, heart pounding, dodging bullets as you escape into the darkness. The Night Witches flew in formations of 3, with 2 planes serving as decoys to draw enemy fire, while the 3rd plane swooped in to drop its bombs. Once they released their payload, the decoy planes would switch, drawing the Germans' attention while another plane bombed the target. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, played out night after night, with every mission pushing the limits of human endurance. But these women weren't just skilled pilots, they were also master tacticians. The Night Witches' raids wreaked havoc on the German war machine, disrupting supply lines and slowing the Nazi advance. What made these women even more extraordinary was their resilience in the face of danger. Many of their missions were flown without the aid of radios or navigation equipment. They relied on maps, compasses, and their own instincts to find their way to their targets. And if a plane was shot down, or worse, if a comrade was lost, they mourned in private, but never showed their fear. To the outside world, they were a unit of unbreakable resolve. The Germans tried everything to stop the Night Witches. They set up anti-aircraft guns, sent patrols into the sky, and even placed bounties on the heads of the pilots, but nothing worked. The Night Witches continued their raids, undeterred and unstoppable. By the end of the war, the 588th Night Bomber Regiment had flown over 30,000 missions and dropped more than 23,000 tons of bombs. 30 of its members were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest honor the Soviet military could bestow. Despite their success, the Night Witches never received the international recognition they deserved. Many of their stories were forgotten, lost in the fog of war. But those who fought against them never forgot. To the German soldiers, the Night Witches were a force of nature, a shadow in the sky that had struck fear into their hearts. And to their fellow Soviets, they were heroes, women who had defied all expectations, who had risen to the challenge and proven that bravery knows no gender. As the war drew to a close, the Night Witches returned to their civilian lives. Some became teachers, others engineers or doctors, but they never forgot the nights they spent flying over enemy lines, the nights when they became legends. So, the next time you hear the soft whoosh of the wind at night, remember the night witches, the young women who flew into the jaws of death. Their story deserves to be told, for they are a testament to the power of resilience, ingenuity, and an unbreakable spirit. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're a history fan, please consider subscribing. All it takes is one click. Next time, we'll be covering the night New Orleans burned, when in 1788, a fire erupted through New Orleans, and a group of enslaved men became the backbone of the city's response.